Hey everyone, I am back. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. I hope that you have had a really amazing week. Happy New Year. It's hard to believe that we are finally in a new year here. I feel like the last little bit of the year just kind of sped by like usual with the holidays, everything busy and all the hecticness of the holidays, right? But it's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. For those of you who are tuning in brand new today, welcome, welcome. We're here live every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Black Women Empowered Incorporated Facebook page, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live. For those of you who are tuning in, tuning back in to Mental Health Moment, welcome back and thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to let me know where you are tuning in here from today in the chat, and hopefully my comments will come up. But yeah, let me know where you're tuning in from today in the chat. Today I am in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. Hope that your new year, the whopping a couple of days here that we just started, is going well. For those of you who are new to Mental Health Moment, every Tuesday, 8 p.m., as I mentioned earlier, Eastern Standard Time, we are here talking about how do you become the best version of who you are so you can show up powerfully for yourself and for those around you. So I'm going to give you a couple of strategies today as usual. And again, let me know where you're tuning in here from in the chat. There we go. All right. Sometimes my comments start to come in later for some reason, but hopefully it is coming in here today. So good evening from San Francisco. Welcome, welcome, and thanks so much for joining here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure we're okay. For some reason, there we go. Okay. For some reason, these comments are coming in super slow. And yeah, so just let me know where you're tuning in from in the chat. Sometimes, unfortunately, there's some technical issues, so sometimes I can't see some of the comments, which I think might be happening today, unfortunately. But just still let me know where you're tuning in from, and then sometimes they come in much later, and I can still see all of them. But nonetheless, thanks for tuning in from Boston. Here, it's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. So I know it's new year, new you, new things. That seems to be the theme that I'm seeing on social media. And I'm sure that's what you are seeing too, which is there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the excitement of the new year and, new me and all those sorts of themes again. But I do want to remind you, and I'm going to give you a reminder today of a couple of questions that you need to be asking yourself, not just at the beginning of the year, though. If you make the commitment to yourself to be asking yourself these questions throughout the year, right? So when the beginning and the excitement of the new year wears off, for you to still be asking yourself and making a lifelong commitment to ask yourself these questions so you can make yourself your number one priority. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. And Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks so much for joining here. Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. Let me Okay, so hopefully, I don't know. Yeah, some of my comments are not coming in clearly, which has happened before for some crazy reason. But nonetheless, let me know how you're doing here in the chat. Hopefully, you all are doing well. And again, talking today about a couple of questions that you need to be asking yourself as we continue to head into this new year, but not just at the beginning of the year, but again throughout the year. So, three questions. If you commit to making these three questions a part, happy New Year to you as well. If you commit to making these questions a part of your lifestyle, a part of your check-in, a part of taking care of yourself, you can hopefully really start to see some really good changes going forward. Um, and Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks so much for joining here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. So the first question I want you to be asking yourself is, how am I doing? Right? Because we oftentimes get really caught up. There's just a lot happening. There can be a lot happening in your personal life. There's a lot happening in the world. Frankly, there's a lot happening maybe with your family or your friends or your coworkers or whomever it is that you're around, and that can be very overwhelming. And a lot of times we forget to check in with ourselves. And for some of us, We're checking in with everybody else except for ourselves. So I am not saying not to check in with those that you care about around you. Very important, yes. But also, question number one is, how am I doing? Making sure you're checking in with yourself. So asking yourself again, and good evening. Thanks so much for joining here. Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. So we're going over tonight, or whatever part of the world you're in, three questions that you should be asking yourself. So number one, how am I doing? Right? And really taking the time to answer that honestly. You are literally the answer that you give to yourself, you can be honest with. You don't necessarily have to share that with others, or you may, depending on where you're at in your day. But asking yourself that and answering it honestly. So, how are you doing? Meaning, are you doing great? Right? Are you having a great day? Are you not having a great day? You're allowed to have days that are hard. Right? You're allowed to have dark times. You're allowed to have anxious times. Allowed to have angry times. Like, you're allowed to feel emotions, but the question again is, how are you, asking yourself, how are you doing, and checking in with yourself. The second question for you to really be thinking about is, what do I need? Right? So what do you need? Meaning, what part of growth may you need to spend more time on and work on? Is it emotionally? Is it physically? Is it spiritually? Is it mentally? Right? What part of your growth process do you feel you need to work on? And you can let me know in the chat, which one of those do you feel applies to you. Keeping in mind, I can see some of the comments, but for some reason, I can't see all of them today, which I don't know why that happens sometimes with these streams. Nonetheless, still put it in the comments. Welcoming the new year. I love it, love it. Welcome. But let me know again in the chat, which one of those do you feel, if you really had to say, where is it that I want to be very intentional? Because we talked about that before on mental health moment. Be intentional and and what you're trying to become. Be intentional. If you're here on mental health moment, it's because you're trying to work on being a better version of you, which I think is amazing. So being intentional. Are you trying to work right now more physically on your physical growth, mental growth, emotional growth, or spiritual growth? Right? Which one of those categories? Emotionally, physically, mentally, or spiritually? So let me know in the chat. And here's the thing. Maybe you're like, Dr. Hammond, I need all four of those. I need growth in all areas, right? So, which is totally fine. It's not to say you can, of course we want to grow in multiple areas, right? But which area would you choose? Do you think for you would choose to spend a little bit more time on? Yep, someone said all of the above, right? But which one would you say you want to spend a little bit more time on? Because sometimes with those four areas, we may not be spending 25 of our percent 25% of our time here, and 25 of our percent here, 25% here, and 25% here. It's not like a perfect circle, always, where we have this perfect pie chart and everything is divided equally. Sometimes there's some area of our life that needs a little bit more tweaking, a little bit more love, a little bit more concentration and effort towards. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? We all, though, you have to think like, but what do I need? Right? Yep, someone said spiritual. Beautiful. Right? So, and there's no right or wrong answer. This answer is for you. So years ago, there was a time where I was like, man, I really need to work like physically on me. Like, there was just changes that I wanted to make, and massive changes that I wanted to make, and make sure I was sleeping better, and make sure that I was eating better, and exercising in a different way, right? So probably it was about 4 or 5 years ago or so. So I really spent a lot of time during that time period to be like, okay, let me put my focus right on physically. How can I be stronger? How can I be healthier? Because I know physically affects mentally and emotionally, and vice versa, right? It's a mind body connection here. So I spent time with that. There was another time period where I said, okay, I really want this year to start off with, and I'm definitely doing that this year as well, but to start off with a lot more spiritual growth, right? So, what can I do in this time period to really make sure that I'm really growing in this direction? Not that I'm neglecting all these other areas, right? We don't want to neglect other areas of our life, but where do I want to really think about emphasizing and spending a lot more time and focus in. Yep. I love it. Someone said, I need growth in all areas, but spiritual growth is first. Beautiful. Right. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. This is why it's important to ask yourself these questions. Number one, how am I doing? Number two, what do I need? Right. So if you said, okay, my need is spiritually, my or to grow spiritually. My need is to grow physically. My need is to grow emotionally because maybe you're like, my emotions are all over the place and I'm struggling to manage fill in the blank, struggling to manage anger, struggling to manage anxiety, struggling to manage your moods, like feeling too sad or feeling too uh, not focused or not organized, right? So maybe it's emotionally working on that, or maybe it's mentally. Maybe it's your mindset where you're like, man, I need to change my thought process. I need to work, which we talked about another mental health moment. I need to work on my self love and what I think about myself. I need to work on positive thinking. I need to work on affirmations, right? Which category, and that's more the mental piece, but which category again do you feel like you need to work on? So you have to ask yourself that. And I want you to really think about this today, but I also want you to continue to ask yourself this. And I'm going to give you the third question in a minute for you to ask yourself this year. But I do want you to know that these three questions I would recommend to you to be thinking about asking yourself either on a daily or weekly basis. But start to make it consistent. So if you say, okay, every whatever day works for you. Every Sunday, I'm going to do this, or every Friday, I'm going to do this, or every Monday at the beginning of my week, whatever day works for you, I'm going to do this weekly and check in with myself and ask myself these three questions. Or you could be saying, okay, I'm going to do this daily. So when I wake up, or when I go to sleep, or in the middle of the day, whatever works for you, but try to make it as consistent as you can. Now, I will say, if you decide, which would be really, really cool and awesome, but if you decide to make this a daily routine, because I know this is going to happen because life happens. If you say, okay, I'm going to do this every single day, ask myself these three questions, and you miss some days during a week, there's 7 days in a week. If you were like, man, this week I only asked myself 3 or 4 times, please, please, please do not beat yourself up for that. Instead, celebrate your progress. Life happens, you all, right? Yes, it's about being consistent. Yes, we hope, right, our wellness goals and those sorts of things stay into place. However, life happens. So it's really important not to get into the self blame game, because what happens with that, anyways, is that it interferes with you meeting your goals, anyways. Because sometimes we fall into a trap. It's a trap where you do something and then maybe the excitement starts to wean off, and maybe you didn't ask yourself these questions 7 days a week and you only did 3 or 4 days. Now you get upset with yourself. Now you get into the self blame. Now you tell yourself a bunch of things that are probably not true. And now you're not doing it at all, right? So we don't want to go down that path, right? We want to stay as consistent as possible, but just know, give yourself grace. If there's a week that goes by where you only get to a couple days where you ask yourself these questions, if daily was your goal, or if weekly is your goal, and you asked yourself 3 weeks out of the 4 weeks out of the month, like it, just give yourself grace, right? And just keep continuing on your wellness journey. Um, and thanks for those who are still starting to join. Here is Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. Today we're talking about 3 questions for you to be asking yourself this year, and hopefully not just this year, but every year of your life. But making the commitment to yourself to ask yourself these questions either daily, preferably, but either daily or weekly. So the question number one, for those of you just joining, question number one is, how am I doing? Right, and these are questions you're asking yourself. Being honest with yourself. You don't have to share your answers if you don't want to. If you're not doing okay and you're overwhelmed and you're stressed out, be honest with yourself and know that that is where you're at right now. Like every day is not going to be perfect for us, right? We're going to be having our dark times. We're going to be having our amazing times and something in between. But how am I doing? The second question to ask yourself is, what do I need? So again, as far as growth, what do you need? Do you need to move in the direction physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally? Where do you need to think about spending more of your time? with yourself for growth. And then the third question is, what action step do I need to take? Very important, right? So, number one, checking in with yourself. Number two, in what area of your life? And number three, what action step do I need to take? Now, action step can be a very scary phrase. I get it. Because it's like, oh my God, now I got to take action, right? But here's the thing, taking action, okay, when you truly step into who you are, when you truly ask yourself, how are you doing? That determines what your action step is going to be. If you feel like you're having a day where you are falling apart, your action step that day might not be to take this massive leap into growth. Your action step might be, man, I need to take care of myself in this moment because I feel like I'm falling apart. So I need to fill in the blank. What is it for you that brings you? We talked about this on another mental health moment. But what is it for you that brings you joy? What is it that brings you peace? What is it that you need to do to get into a calmer state of mind and to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, right? You could, or you could have a day when you check in with yourself first and you're asking yourself, man, how am I doing? And you're having an amazing day, right? And you're like, I'm good. I feel healthy. Something positive happened to me today. Like, you're in a good space. What is your action step? Well, it might be taking a leap or it might still be a baby step, but it's doing something for you that again just helps you with your growth, right? Because again, the second thing we identify was what area are we working with, right? So some of you mentioned in the comments here that you're working spiritually. I think someone said, or actually, a lot of you here said spiritually, but again, there's no right or wrong, physically, spiritually, and I'm sure probably some of the other comments on the other platforms that I can't see today for some reason, like LinkedIn. I don't know why I can't see your comments, you guys. Sorry, but I'm pretty sure there's a range of different answers. So spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, or maybe a little combination of those things. Wherever it is that you decided to really spend that extra time in that area for your growth, then your action step, right, would align to that. So for example, so I know I'm talking very theoretically, so I'm going to give you some more examples here. um, and I'm going to share where I'm at, not because you have to be doing what I'm doing at all, but just to give you an example. So this year, so again, I told you all about a couple years ago when I was like, man, like physically, I need to make some changes. I made really massive changes. I'm very proud of those changes. I still spend time making sure like nutrition's good and exercise and sleep and all those good things. However, that's not the only focus or the major area right now that I'm like, okay, let me try to grow even greater in that area, if that makes sense. However, I'm still maintaining that area. So now that this year I'll say, okay, spiritual growth, like that's my area, right? So when I checked in, I said, how am I doing? Like, okay, I'm doing good. I'm ready. I feel ready to take this step. What do I need? More spiritual growth because there's, thank you, Lord, a lot of positive things coming in 2024 that I'm also trying to mentally and spiritually prepare for. And so then the next question was, what action step do I need to take? So for me, one of the things that I did, and I like to do anyhow, is go to the bookstore. You don't have to do this unless you really want to. But I like sometimes going to bookstores. Sometimes I'll just hop on Amazon and order something. But going to the bookstore because I like to kind of get a sense when I'm getting journals and things like that of what kind of resonates with me and what speaks to me. So nonetheless, so I got two journals. One was more of like a weekly journal. It's a faith based, just questions and scriptures and things to check in and ask yourself. And then actually the other one I got was for something else. But and then I also have a daily devotional that I have every morning, right, for spiritual growth, which is just scriptures and checking in and short prayers and that sort of thing. So again, that was one of the ways I'm like, okay, what is my action step? My action step for me was let me go. It's beginning of the year. Let me get a new journal, continue with my journaling process. And that's my action step, right? And so each day now, one of my action steps are going to be obviously to use the journal, my weekly journal and my daily devotional, right? So that's just one example. But what's beautiful, I think, yep, someone said I need growth in every area of my life. Spiritual growth does take a priority. I have grown by leaps and bounds, but we never stop growing. Life changes and we must change with it. Absolutely. And I was just about to actually mention that. Because what's beautiful about whatever area of growth you're in is just like you just said, well, it is where you put your priority, but you're not going to stop growing, right? Hopefully. You're not going to stop wanting to grow. So even like this person said in the chat, I've grown by leaps and by bounds, which is great. I feel that way too in certain areas of my life. But hopefully you're not going to get to the point where like, well, I'm done, right? You wouldn't say that. You continue on your journey, right? So again, think about what steps you need to take. The beauty of the new year is that a lot of times, what especially what I've seen on social media is there's a lot of action, yay, that takes place during the beginning of the year. Again, it's like new you, or what is it, new year, new me, and all these sorts of themes that we tend to see. So take that momentum if you have that momentum to do what you need to do, your whatever your step is, if it's a journal, if it's a book, if it's some type of motivation, if it's um exercise or nutrition you need to change or mindset training, like wherever it is that you know you need to be spending your time, make sure that you are being intentional about your growth process. Very, very important. I love, well, I love being on Mental Health Moment here with you all so much every week, but also in order for me to do my best to show up for you all, and to teach you all different self care strategies and ways to be better versions of yourself, I don't want to be hypocrite, right? Like I have to be doing that too. So just know that I'm with you on this journey, right? And I already told you all this year. Well, for some of you that were on the last couple weeks, you know, my word for this year is perspective, because 2023 was actually kind of a roller coaster year for me. But nonetheless, just putting things into perspective. So 2024, for me, my word is perspective. So you may have your word, you may have your phrase. Be intentional about making sure to, again, check in with yourself this year. Very important. Asking yourself, what do you need? And also taking those action steps, baby steps, leaps, whatever it is you need to do. All right. Make sure that you get in the right mindset to accomplish those things because they absolutely can be done. Now, I do want to share before I hop off this live that none of these things that I'm sharing on Mental Health Moment are meant to be overnight fixes. I wish I had the magic wand. I always say that. I do not. So there's nothing I'm sharing that I can say, man, if you just do this, like, you know, by tomorrow, it's everything's gonna be great and roses. It doesn't work that way. This process, the wellness journey that each and every one of us are, it takes time, but that's okay, right? Give yourself grace, give yourself patience, check in with yourselves. Hopefully, you wrote down those 3 questions. Again, make the commitment to use those questions either every day or every week, but checking in with yourself, asking yourself what you need, what area you need in, and also what action step do you need to take. Very important. I wish you all the best, most amazing year. But also, what would be even greater than just an amazing year is an amazing commitment to yourself and making yourself your number one priority. So, if you all need me before next Tuesday, then feel free to, you can reach out drnikishahammond.com or on Instagram, Dr. Hammond, or LinkedIn, Dr. Nikisha Hammond, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on different social media platforms, so feel free to connect. Have an amazing week, you all. I will be back next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Black Women Empowered Incorporated Facebook page, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live. Hopefully, my comments from LinkedIn will work next week because they didn't come in for some reason. So, for those of you who are hopefully getting this message also on LinkedIn, usually I love to read your comments too, but for some reason they did not want to come in today. But I'm sure you guys had amazing comments because you always do. So I didn't forget about you all. But I see some of the Facebook comments. But nonetheless, I will be back, like I said, next Tuesday, 8 p.m. right here on Black Women Empowered Incorporated Facebook page, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live. Be blessed. Have an amazing week. and I'll see you all next week. Bye, you guys.